Hey, this is Dalton Pence, host of Locked On Louisville,
And this is Ken Gibbs, host of Locked On Wolfpack.
and you're listening to a special crossover podcast featuring, as we mentioned, the Locked On Louisville and the Locked On Wolfpack podcast. Season is a little over 2 months away, but hey, it is not a bad time to talk about a possible matchup that could have some big implications when it comes to the ACC Championship game. That is obviously between the Louisville Cardinals and the NC State Wolfpack. A lot coming to you on this episode of the show. We're going to begin by discussing how much are we taking away from the Wolfpack's win last season and how much is being applied to this year's squad. We'll also talk about the upcoming expectations for both teams. And then in the final segment, we will focus on just the overall fears of the opposing team, looking into a vacuum. So, Kenton, I guess my first question really is kind of a general question, so to speak. How much do you take away from a victory or a loss in the year prior when you're talking about, trying to predict a future matchup in the next season?
Well, first of all, let me say this, right? So I don't want any Louisville fans to get mad at me because I love me some Louisville. Y'all are one of my favorite teams in the ACC. Your women's basketball program, elite. It's a reason that it's always NC State, Louisville at the end there. And any year it's not that, it's a disappointment to the conference, let's be honest. And with that being said, whenever people ask me who's the best player you ever played against or saw play against live and in the flesh, I always say Lamar Jackson because it's not even close. It's not. I saw James. I played against the Jameis Winston team that lit everybody up in that loss to Oregon in the semifinals the year after they won it all. I saw him in person. I played against Deshaun Watson, and I'm telling you, I've never seen anything like Lamar Jackson. So Louisville fans, know that I'm on your side. I love it. I love it. The KFC Center, the Yum Center, the Papa John's stadium. I love it all. But now, let's get down to the nitty gritty. How much do I take away from NC State winning last year? Honestly, not that much. Not that much. And here's why I say not that much. While I don't think that Louisville got exponentially better, the thing is, we all know that the quarterback is the most important position in sports by a mile, or in football by a mile, rather. And with that being said, Malik Cunningham is one of the most dangerous individuals in the nation. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, but he suffers from a lot of the same things that Lamar did, and he doesn't have much help. Like his receiving core, his tight end core, the backs have not done. They've done precious little to make me say they scare me. They concern me. You have to watch out for the quarterback and this guy. So with that being said, I mean, I guess my takeaway from last year would be I wouldn't be expecting too much different of a game because the game plan was simple. If Malik Cunningham is gonna beat you, he has to do it with his arm. And if he has to beat you with his arm, that's fine. Everybody, man up, check it, find a guy, lock on to him, make him beat us like that. We didn't disguise any coverages or do anything crazy on the back end against Louisville. It was very simply a situation where we said man for man in the secondary, we're better than y'all, and we'll go out there and prove it. And I mean, we did.
I agree. And I think that I'm kind of in the same line of thinking with you. The only real reason why I would, give any substance from last year's game is because Louisville does have a lot returning. And, having Devin Leary back for NC State, there's a lot of familiarity there, but there still are some moving parts. And it's been kind of hard because the NC State game for Louisville was kind of one of those head scratchers because it seemed like through the first three quarters that I'm not sure how the Cardinals were even winning the game because they were up 10-7 going into the fourth quarter, but it seemed like they had shot themselves in the foot a couple times with turnovers and some dropped passes and some missed coverages and stuff like that. But when the fourth quarter came about, well, Devin Leary and company did what Devin Leary and company pretty much did all season long, and that was exploit the opposing secondary. So, really, in my opinion, I'm kind of in the same line of thinking as you, but the only reason I would even give it any entertaining thought is because both quarterbacks are coming back.
Well, yes, and from that, so I'll say this. that game was a game where NC State had to prove that it was not the NC State team that it was in the past. And part of that was losing games that they should have won. And that game against Louisville was a game that you look at it on paper and you say, not only should you win this game to a degree, you should probably dominate. I mean, as much as I love Louisville, you got to be honest about what is or is not there. And the fact of the matter is, you look at NC State, and the only thing that you say, well, this should give Louisville a lot of hope, is that I believe that was either the game that Isaiah Moore tore his ACL, or it might have been a game before that. I can't remember. But I believe he was out for that game. So I think that was a moment where you say, like, okay, this could be a moment for Louisville. But even in that game, NC State did not do some things well that they flatly needed to, that they flatly should have. The fact that their leading rusher was Bam Knight with 20-some-odd yards. Like, that in and of itself is madness to say, okay, your leading rusher on a team that prides themselves on doing a little bit of everything well, prides itself on offensive balance, which, I mean, objectively last season, that wasn't the case. It became the Devin Leary show because we couldn't run the ball. But at that point in time, it was still early enough in the season where we wanted to still try at running the ball. It was embarrassing. You know what I mean? I mean, 23 yards on 11 carries is a lackluster to say the least. But again, the key for NC State was winning the games that you're supposed to win, even if some things don't go right. The running game did not go right. To Louisville's credit, that front seven played out of their minds that game. They really did. And the secondary played exceedingly well for about 3.5 quarters. But like you said, the fourth quarter, the wheels just kind of came off for Louisville.
Yeah, and I do agree. I will say, as a little bit of a rebuttal, is that it wasn't an anomaly in terms of the rushing defense, because it's kind of crazy, because the rushing defense coming into the season was supposed to be one of the aspects of the defense where we're kind of like, what's going to go on here. But throughout the season, the Louisville defense on the ground really showed out. I know that Duke and Syracuse weren't the greatest teams, but two teams that ran the ball well. Mateo Durant had under 100 yards, and then Sean Tucker and Garrett Schrader both got bottled up for the Syracuse Orange in a dramatic way. So not necessarily saying it was a lockdown defense per se, and not necessarily going as far as saying that, I expected NC State not to run the ball, to any success. It isn't the most far-fetched thing to say, is because I was very, very impressed with what the Cardinals did front seven-wise, but the secondary and the coverages, we saw it. You go up against one of the best passing arms in the ACC. I mean, we saw it against Brennan Armstrong a couple weeks prior to that. It was kind of Louisville's kryptonite, and I don't know what it was about Louisville and fourth quarter debacles, but kind of reared its ugly head.
And let me say this. In saying that, Louisville's front seven, again, they showed out a lot last year. They did. I know there's no debating that. What I'm saying is, you had the first offensive player taken in the NFL draft this last year, anchor of your offensive line, and you couldn't muster up more than 2 yards per carry? Listen, I don't care how bad the boys across the ball from you are. If you have the first offensive player off the board in the biggest of the leagues, the best league that there is, we're not talking, no disrespect to these guys. We're not talking the CFL, the AFL, the XFL. We're talking the big leagues now, the guys who are going to make life-changing money off just their rookie contract. And for whatever reason, the Pancake King of Raleigh couldn't open any holes. For whatever reason, it is a moment where I look at that game and I say that there is. So the more I think about it, the more I think, with a lot of players coming back, there will be some familiarity in some aspects of, like, all right, we know what this team can do. But I still think that there isn't much to take away from that, only because many of the players, for NC State at least, who showed up the biggest will no longer be here. Emeka Emezi had a hell of a game that game. I don't know if I can say hell.
He always does against Louisville. That's not new.
And that's the thing. That's the thing, right? So who's going to step into that role, right? I've sounded like Bill Murray in Groundhog's Day, repeatedly saying, this is Devin Carter's year. Devin Carter's got all the tools. He's going to show up this year. And every year he's proven me wrong. Is this the year where he finally shows up? Who knows? Is Anthony Smith going to be the big-time player that we saw him be last year? Is Keon Lassane? Is Porter? Who's going to step into that role? We know Thayer Thomas is going to be the old reliable. We know he's going to do what he's going to do, but you need somebody to step into that role because, like we've talked about, Louisville's front seven, it could be the island of misfit toys. It could be a bunch of 5-stars. It could be a bunch of no-names. Somehow, some way, Louisville's front seven always finds a way to be decent against the run. So, with that being said, we're going to have to find a way to have guys make big plays when it matters. Because if you can't beat Louisville with the big bomb, you're going to have a tough time beating them.
That is very true. And I love that you kind of started talking about some guys that need to step up. That's a perfect segue into talking about some of the expectations that we have for both teams. There's one question that I'm going to put you on the spot with to start out the second segment of the show. We'll talk about that here in just a second after we talk about our friends over at Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry when you have computers with access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket? It allows you to save time and money. It's a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. The prices are reliably low for every customer. And look, they have everything you could ever need, from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Go explore their easy-to-use website today at rockauto.com and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Thanks again, everyone, for making both Locked On Louisville and Locked On Wolfpack your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, both shows are free on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. Dalton Pence here with Kenton Gibbs on this special Locked On crossover podcast. Kenton, the big question that I was referring to in terms of expectations, is this ACC Championship game or bust for the NC State Wolfpack this season?
You know, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. But
Clemson's better.
Clemson
is a lot better.
I'm going to say it. You know, there was an old song. If I can't remember who made it, but it was one of those old quartets, and they said, "If you don't know me by now, you will never." Dorn, it's your time. If you don't win it by now, you ain't never gonna win it. This is your year, big dog. This is your year to get it done. And let me explain something to you. I agree that Clemson should be better than they were last year, right? Clemson had a ton of injuries, all that good stuff. I don't think that people are properly giving credit to how good Brent Venables is.
That's
really
fair. That's very, very fair.
I really so I want to go back to a play that I talk about, and Locked On Wolfpack fans, Locked On ACC fans, y'all have heard me talk about this play a lot, but bear with me because Locked On Louisville fans might not. There was a play in the college football playoff, Clemson against Ohio State. This is Justin Fields, who thrown like 40 touchdowns to like 3 or 4 interceptions, right? And one of those interceptions came against Clemson in the playoff to Isaiah Simmons, who many people thought, oh, he's an edge rusher. Well, maybe he's a Mike linebacker. Well, what does he do? On the play where he caught the interception, do you know where he was playing on the field? The deep half. He was playing deep half. A guy that many people said, is he a nickel? Is he an edge? He was playing a deep half because of the blitz look, and he made a play on the ball to make it to get an interception. I don't think that people properly put into perspective a guy who could make Tanner Mays a second rounder, a guy who could do, and this is no disrespect to Tanner Mays because he really was a freak of nature, but he was still not a guy that many people looked at and said he's probably going to be one of the top 70 guys in the NFL draft in a few years, just because he was a tweener in the worst way. You know what I mean? He was too big to be a safety, a little too stiff, but maybe not strong enough at the point to be a backer. And look at it. So, with that being said, you lose both of your coordinators. You have a quarterback situation that while everybody, I'm sorry, I don't get it. I don't see what everybody sees in DJ. I don't see it at all.
I think it's going to be Cade's job to lose halfway through the season.
When I saw him play his freshman year, I knew right away, oh, he's not that good. And everybody said, well, how do you say that, Kenton? He threw for 400 some odd yards and all this and all that and da-da-da-da-da. Do you know who his leading receiver was during that time? Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne was his leading receiver. Travis Etienne had more receptions and yards than any other receiver for Clemson over the course of the games that he replaced Trevor Lawrence. Why is that important? Travis Etienne was a matchup nightmare for any defense. It didn't matter what linebackers you had. It didn't matter what safety you had. Travis Etienne is the ACC's all-time leading rusher. This man was different. He is the guy to me that gets the least credit for what he actually did in terms of how impactful he was for Clemson and how long he was impactful for Clemson. This man did things that were flatly dynamic every time he touched the ball, regardless of the positioning he was touching the ball from. And so you see that all of his yards are coming from either check downs or option routes to a running back when teams are having to account for all of this talent on the outside. And then you say to yourself, I said coming into the year, I said, I don't know. I don't know about DJ. I don't know about him. And as the year went on, he looked worse and worse and worse. He got replaced at one point by the guy that they said was a bigger Russell Wilson. Yeah, Dabo. Now, I don't know about how honest you were being there. But with that being said, again, even if we say, well, it's the new guy's job to lose, that's fine. You're still talking
he's not played a single snap, though.
Exactly. And now watch this. What if the same thing that happens with DJ happens with him?
Because DJ was a top 10 guy. I mean, like they're talking like this guy's a surefire guy. Well, DJ was supposed to be too.
And that's the thing. They're still saying that DJ is going to be a top 10 pick in next year's draft. I'm telling you, I don't know where people are getting the information that they're getting about Clemson. And this is no disrespect to Clemson. I don't think that they're a bad program by any means of by any stretch of the imagination. What they did was legendary. What they did will go down as one of the greatest dynasties in college football history. With that being said, you can only live off the paw on the helmet for so long. At some point in time, you got to show and prove. Can this team show and prove that? Can this team show and prove, hey, I don't know what y'all thought it was from last year, but we're still the class of the conference. Last year was the aberration, not the rule going forward. Show us, because it seems to me like an empire in decay. You got folks leaving left and right. You got a lot of folks worried about your quarterback situation. I don't know. All I'm saying is, Coach Doran, this is your year, and I didn't mean to make that about Clemson. But I think
it all kind of goes together, because you're talking. A lot of people are kind of not. I'm not saying they're putting them on the back burner, but they're kind of doing the same thing with Wake Forest. Like, oh, you forgot that Clemson's back, and I look at it, and I'm kind of with you, because they have the personnel on defense. They returned a lot of studs on that defense. We're gonna be able to tell. We're gonna be able to tell right away how that loss of Brent Venables is going to affect this team.
Again, I'm more worried about Wake Forest than I am about Clemson. And that's just the reality. That's just the reality. You can say what you want about
it. If you play him in Winston-Salem, you can't handle referees adding a second back on the clock without I digress. I'm not going to get myself too worked up.
They're coming to Raleigh this time. Good.
But
even with that being said, even though we're good against Wake Forest at home, the fact of the matter is you still got to go to Clemson and win that game. So, that Valley is nuts. It's a raucous environment and all that. But Louisville is a team that, let's be honest, Louisville and NC State defensively had some of the same problems. Not to say that they were the same caliber of defense or that you saw me in the same thing, but Louisville had the problem of their corners at the moment of truth panicked and blew games that there was no way. You just look up and you were like, what are you doing?
Some of these games were wild, man, with multiple fourth. And a lot of people, what frustrates a lot of Louisville fans is because a lot of it was people were thinking about what are we doing in terms of our formations, in terms of our identity on defense, because teams were really, really hurting us like slants over the middle, like immediately, going 5 yards and turning around, killing us in their intermediate routes. And our cornerbacks are still playing 10 yards off the ball. There's a lot of, zone coverage to where it's like, I mean, I know you're not trying to tell me that Kittrell Clark cannot match up with some of these guys one-on-one and kind of going down the line. That's kind of what frustrated a lot of Louisville fans is like, we've got the athletes in the defensive backs room. If you get burned one-on-one, you get burned, but something's not working. And it seemed like it was just a recurring issue last year that going into this year, it's a year for Dave Dorn, but Scott Satterfield, there's a lot riding on this season for him too. Maybe not ACC Championship-wise, but something's got to give on defense.
And let me tell you,
any excuses either.
And let me tell you, with Tony Gibson's unit, everybody knows the front seven is going to be one of the best in the nation. Great. Okay, good. That back end. Mm-hmm. What are y'all going to do? Because Charleston Rambo darn near got drafted off of what he did against NC State alone. I mean, he couldn't be stopped. Every time you looked up, Charleston was hitting us for a big play again. Tyler Van Dyke had a real easy day. What's the phrase? It was summertime and the living is easy. That's what it was. Every time he went to look for Charleston Rambo, living got real easy for him. So with that being said, how are our outside corners going to play? The same thing that killed us at Wake Forest. We were in a 4th and 13, the game on the line, and you let them convert because your corners panic at the moment of truth. So we face similar situations as far as, maybe not so much of maybe we had opposite problems. Maybe your defensive coordinator didn't trust your DBs enough. Maybe ours trusted our corners too much. Maybe we both got to find a middle ground to where.
Regardless, there was a lot to be desired from the back end of the defense.
Exactly. So with that being said, I think that this could be a really, really banner year for not just NC State football, but NC State sports as a whole. Before, Dalton, I'm looking at you, and I don't know how old you are, but I know that both of us were not alive last time NC State won a conference championship in men's basketball, baseball, or football. I know that for a fact. How old are you, Dalton?
24.
24, not even close. So with that being said, this is a year that could change the fortunes of, or that could change where NC State is in terms of their marquee and cachet going forward for a very long time. But I want to flip this question on its head and ask you, what are the expectations going in for Louisville? Because we all know Satterfield's seat, I wouldn't say it's the hottest in the ACC. I would say that that's old boy up at Syracuse. I think that Dino Babers' seat is hotter than the sidewalk on Arizona in the middle of August. But Scott Satterfield, that temperature turning up a little bit. What are the expectations for Louisville this year?
I will say that the coals in which that seat is burning on have kind of tampered just a little bit, kind of cooled down a bit with the way that they are recruiting in the 2023 class. That was one of the big concerns for Satterfield was, okay, when's he going to start recruiting at a better rate? And granted, he's done that with the introduction of NIL and stuff like that. Kenton, the problem with Scott Satterfield's tenure so far at Louisville is that year one, after coming off the worst year in program history, 2-10, Bobby Petrino flames out. He comes in the program, immediately wins 8 games. Mm-hmm. Completely blows all of the expectations out of the water. Well, a lot of that year was winning 50-50 ball games. The next 2 seasons, now obviously the COVID year, it is what it is. It is what you make of it. 500 or under 500 record. They went 4-7. The year after that, well, we're 6-7. So the 50-50 games we won in year one, it's been pretty much the opposite in year two. A lot of people are kind of done with the moral victory talk. The whole, we're getting better. It's just we're a couple plays away, especially when you consider the fourth quarter debacles that this team has had. So really, year 4, it's all about results. And I think that a lot of people in the city kind of have 7 wins kind of pinned as the measuring stick. I think that people will be okay with a bowl honestly, but anything under that and things get real interesting heading into next December. The rivalry game against Kentucky cannot be a blowout like it has been since 2018. So it's not too sky high of expectations. I think that, 7 to 8 games is winnable. For me, though, the expectation is you have to win 7 because the schedule warrants it. You have the opportunities. Does get a little difficult in the back end, but 7 games is where we're at. And year 4 with some like 18 combined starters on both sides of the ball coming back, including Malik Cunningham, you got to get the results done.
You know what's interesting? Dan Wolken of the Associated Press said that Dave Doeren got a contract extension. I want to say it was heading into last year. And he said that, Dave Doeren just showed that winning 8 games is good enough to get you a contract extension at NC State. And in my mind, I said, he said winning 8 games consistently is enough to get a contract extension at NC State. And I said, winning 8 games is enough to get a contract extension at almost every program in the country.
Right.
There's only about I want to say 15 programs that, like, if you consistently win 8, people are looking like
neither of our programs are in that top 15.
No. But I'm gonna tell you though, some of those programs you need to, what does Stephen A always say? Lay off the weed because your program isn't that program anymore. And I'm not going to exactly. I'm not going to say any names, but I mean,
I will. I'll name drop them.
Well, you know what? I'll go ahead and match your energy. USC, y'all aren't that squad anymore. Y'all should be happy with 8 wins. Y'all should be extremely elated with that. Like, come on. But anywho, that's the reality, right? Like, there's a very select few teams that would not be happy with 8 wins. So I agree. I think if Scott Satterfield wins 7, 8 games, I think that seat cools off tremendously. Now anything over 8, they may build that man a statue. I'm just saying, if he has an 8-win season, a 9, 10-win season,
I don't know if they're ready for a statue because I'll tell you, Kenton, there was a time last December, very early December, where if you would have asked me 24 hours before a Friday night news dump, I would have told you I thought that Scott Satterfield was going to be out as the head coach at Louisville, and Jeff Brom would be entered in. Things kind of changed, it seemed like, or at least it seemed like there was a lot of conflicting reports. So I say all that to say this. If Scott Satterfield goes out and he wins 9 games this year, a lot of people are going to be like, okay, we're back on the Satterfield train. Do it again. Go out and do it again because the recruiting class, like, people are starting to look at the prices of admission to get back on the Satterfield train, but they're not going to buy those tickets until Louisville starts winning those games. And at the end of the day, winning cures all. Winning cures all. What's the highest level you play ball at, dog? High school.
Okay, I played for NC State. I was part of Doran's first recruiting class, and let me tell you something. Being a part of his first recruiting class, I saw what fans say when you're not good, when the team isn't good, when there's dissension in the locker room, when there's this divide of OB recruits,
sure,
Doran recruits, all that good stuff. I've seen it in real life. Winning cures all. I don't care what's happening in your program. I don't care what ridiculousness is happening. And I've seen in other programs where much worse things than losing are going on. But if your team on Saturday can have more points than their opponent on a consistent basis, nobody's going to care. So, you know what I mean? Satterfield seems to run a clean program. It looks like we won't see him on a motorcycle with any interns or anything like that.
I hope not. I hope not.
It's
too much going on at Louisville already, man. We need to relax.
Hey, listen. I get it. It's the nature of college sports, baby. Every time you look up, the adults are the ones misbehaving. But the reality is winning cures all, right? At the end of the day, I said the same thing about Doran after that year where everybody and their mama who put on the NC State jersey got hurt, and everybody said, "Oh, Doran's terrible, and we've seen he can't win the big games," and da-da-da. All I said was, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. One way or the other. He'll either be out after next year or he'll show us he can do some things. And then all of a sudden, there were 2 straight years that went really, really well. And I'm like, okay, you see, this is why. This is why you don't necessarily hang your hat on a bad year or a bad 2 year. Don't worry about it. Now, Exactly. Relax. Now, if you see that this becomes the rule instead of aberration, then you have the conversation. If the rule for your coach is 4 to 5 wins, you can't have that. But if it's an aberration season where you do that, you'll be all right. Relax. You'll figure it out.
And that's kind of where Louisville is. And it's one of those things to where, like, a handful of these games are kind of like the measuring stick here for Louisville. And I think that there's only a couple games on the schedule that I have truly pinned as losses for the Cardinals. I have Kentucky pinned as a loss. I have Clemson pinned as a loss because last year was probably the worst year almost in Dabo's tenure, and Louisville still couldn't beat them. I'm convinced we're cursed. I feel better about the Wake Forest game than I do the NC State game. I'll tell you why here in just a second, here in the next segment, after we talk about our friends over at BetOnline. Look, betonline.net has been your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info throughout the athletic seasons. Find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news this season, including this year's NHL playoffs. Shout out to the Colorado Avalanche on winning the Stanley Cup, by the way, and the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And it's the best spot for your podcast and news all season long. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. Final segment of this special Locked On crossover podcast episode featuring the Locked On Louisville and Locked On Wolfpack shows. Dalton Pence here with Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, I mentioned that there is a reason why I feel better about the Wake Forest game than the NC State game, and that reason's name is Devin Leary. I will tell you, I get the hype between Wake Forest, but I think that Louisville historically does a little bit better matching up with Wake Forest. They looked pretty solid against Sam Hartman last year, played them pretty toughly in Winston-Salem. Sure, they have a lot coming back. So does Louisville. It's a game to where, hey, Wake Forest had a ton of offense. It was a game where they were throwing punches back and forth. It wasn't like Wake Forest laid an egg. They played a very solid game. I'll just completely put it out there. I think when I talked last week on the Locked On Louisville podcast about Louisville fans being upset that Malik Cunningham was like a fourth-team All-ACC preseason selection, according to a media member, I was like, relax. There's a lot of good quarterbacks in this conference, and I said it for the record. I think Devin Leary is the best quarterback in the conference. What we saw from him last year, even though some of his there's some personnel changes, he's one of those guys that, like, if NC State has a good year, I understand it's probably C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young's award to lose. But, man, I feel like on the outside looking in, Devin Leary is one of those maybe Heisman dark horses.
You know, there was one person who told everybody. I'm gonna just tell you now. I'm gonna just say, you can ask anybody who knows me. I'm a little bit of a know-it-all. I like being right. I enjoy it, and I told everybody.
You should.
Before the COVID year even ended, I told everybody, whatever NC State does this year, do not worry about it. Devin Leary is going to come back and take this team to a next level. Not only is he going to come back and take this team to a next level, he's going to have a dynamic season in which he's going to darn near rewrite the record books. And everybody said I was crazy and that he hadn't proven anything and all this and all that. And I said, well, let's just do this. Look at the sample size we had. Expound that over a season and look at what that looks like. And everybody said, well, he barely played the garbage time against Virginia Tech, and Duke's defense wasn't anything. And I was okay, all right.
Just wait.
And well. Would you looky here? Look how the turntables. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this one I'm trying to tell you, Devin Leary had all the tools coming in, and when I saw him last year. Or not last year, the year before last in the COVID year, when he came in and NC State went on that winning streak and they looked really, really good. I knew right then, I said, he's the guy. Not only is he the guy of the future, he's going to take us into, if he stays healthy and this team stays healthy, he could very possibly usher us into a new era of NC State football in terms of success. With that being said, the ACC does have a lot of good quarterbacks. We've had a lot. People don't realize how great this run of ACC quarterbacks is, and I mentioned them
It's been
earlier
wild.
in a little name drop. But go down from Jameis Winston all the way through now, and think about some of the quarterbacks that have played in this conference. You got Jameis right up there. You got Deshaun Watson up there. You got Trevor Lawrence up there. You got Lamar Jackson winning the Heisman in there. You got Kenny Pickett, who was a Heisman guy in there. You got a ton of great quarterbacks. De'Aaron King coming in. That's the guy that I said was most like Russell Wilson I've seen. That is a bad man right there. You got a ton of guys who have come into the ACC and placed in it. You've got the greatest quarterback in UNC history. I'm struggling for this young man's name. Help me out. I don't like the boys in baby blue, so I try to forget as much about him as possible. Sam Howell. There we go. That guy. Anyway, you've got a lot of really good quarterbacks that have come through this conference recently. If your guy is not being talked about as the best guy, it's okay. This quarterback class is crazy. This is crazy. Now, I don't know why everybody's so high on Tyler Van Dyke, but that's another conversation for another time. But
I think he's top 5, but I think he's going to be top 5. But
yeah, I think he's top 5, but I don't think everybody's like, oh, he's number 1 or 2
like
or 2A. I agree. I can't give him higher than 4. I think you've got
a new coach, new system. Yeah, let's pump the brakes a bit.
And his number 1 guy is going, who, let's be honest, his number 1 guy, he made him look great. It wasn't the other way around. But that's another story for another time. Long story short, this is a situation where Louisville fans, it don't matter. Y'all can, if he is the 4th best quarterback in this conference and everybody plays like everyone believes they will, y'all will have some darn good quarterback play. That the 4th best quarterback in this conference, we're not talking about the Pac-12, where like who would be the 4th best quarterback in the Pac-12, right? Like you wouldn't think.
What's his name? Caleb Williams? Would that be who? I mean, I guess.
I don't. But so here's my thing. If you go down,
when's the last time a Pac-12 team truly did something?
But that's my thing. If you look at the other conferences, right, and you say, well, who are the conferences with very strong quarterback play? I don't think that you have that many where you go, the 4th best quarterback is still going to be a bad dude. That's going to be a guy that is an absolute game changer, game plan wrecker. Whatever you wrote at coming into this game, you might have to rip it up at halftime and try something totally new. And Malik Cunningham is that type of guy. If you let him get rolling, if his receiving core helps him out, if his running backs can actually make a legitimate threat on that read option to where you're not thinking, hey, listen, defensive end, stay with Malik. I don't care if that running back gets the ball. I've literally seen situations where it's been laughable if the quarterback has the ball, Lamar Jackson. And so, with that being said, like you, if they can give more in terms of the help, in terms of being, Gladys Knight is Gladys Knight, but the Pips were great too. If the Pips can be good, you'll have a good time. But Malik Cunningham, he's a bad dude, and I'll tell you what, I'm not going to try to be spicy and edgy and say like, ooh, there's somebody else on Louisville's team that scares me the most. Absolutely not. Malik Cunningham is the type of guy, when I was playing, he was the type of guy that you would know all week, like, hey, listen, every game I come into with my P's and Q's, but there were different players that I had to know, like, all right, what's their thing? I need to know their thing. You know what I mean? Some teams, it was like, okay, the guard, I need to know his thing because he's a bad boy. If I don't know his thing, he'll embarrass me. Who's the running back? What's his thing? Or the center? With Louisville, it's very clear. Malik Cunningham is the heart and soul. The team goes as he goes.
Sure,
but with that being said, the team goes where they help him to get to. Because, I mean, people say the quarterback is the most important position in football, but also say it's the most dependent position in football. The quarterback depends on more people to do their job right than any other position. If a defensive tackle is great at what he does, he's great at what he does, regardless. If a cornerback is great at what he does, he's great at what he does, regardless. A quarterback, they need help. They need folks to get open. They need folks to open holes. They need those things. So what are the other guys going to do to step up and help Malik Cunningham, but make no bones about it? If I'm a defensive coordinator I'm already bald, but if I had hair left, I wouldn't be losing. I wouldn't be losing any hair strands over. Oh man, who in that receiving room is going to break out this year?
Especially
Malik
since
Cunningham.
today's episode was about a wide receiver group that has to have somebody step up.
Yeah. And that's exactly my point. Like I'm not losing sleep over nobody else. I'm not, oh man, who's gonna be the guy? Nobody else but Malik Cunningham.
And that's kind of the thing that, I'm not as familiar with NC State's offense as I was last year, obviously with the season not even started yet. I'm interested to see how they're going to replace Ekwonu, how they're going to replace guys like Emeka Emezi, like you mentioned, what the running back committee is going to look like and company. But let's be honest, the fact that they still have Devin Leary there, I remember when I heard he was come back, I'm sitting there going, damn, stop, just stop. And then, almost simultaneously, Sam Hartman's like, man, you know what? I'll come back too. And I'm just sitting there like, okay, well, I guess we're running it back, fellas. Brennan Armstrong, come on back in. Sure enough, he did. So the guys are back.
It makes sense. It makes sense for the first two. I don't think Brennan Armstrong has too much more money out there to go get. I really don't. I don't think that he had a banner year last year. He had a crazy.
How much better can you get in an offense that literally only throws the ball?
And that's what I'm saying. He had a year where it's like,
he said, I want to do it again.
That's, hey, listen, maybe they got some crazy NIL going on in Charlottesville. Maybe they got something that's, I passed through Charlottesville on trips to other places before. I ain't never seen nothing that's like, oh, I want to be here. Exactly. But with that being said, this is a deep ACC quarterback situation. And again, I'm glad that we're both very honest people with ourselves. And we're both very honest about the fact that our quarterbacks are the show. They're the show. And you know what I mean? Like, realistically, NC State's defense has a lot of big names. And, you look at guys like Peyton Wilson, who was a 5-star, who was from the first time I ever saw him play at Orange High School forward, I knew he has it. You don't know what it is. You can't quantify it, but when you're watching somebody that's just better than everybody else, and not only are they bigger, stronger, faster, they got that factor of like, yeah, I'm the guy. What are you going to do about it? He has that. You got Isaiah Moore. You got Drake Thomas. You got two linebackers that are very, what's the word I want to look at? Polar opposites, I would like to say, because Isaiah Moore is extremely cerebral. Just a thinking man. You can tell that he thinks his way through the game like nobody does. And Drake Thomas, who's a bowling ball, a butcher notch, is going to everything that's in his way. Come here, let's do some thudding, let's do some hitting. You got those guys, and you're looking at the linebackers that are behind them, and Poole and some other guys. You're looking at a lot of guys who could potentially, shake some things up defensively. But again, this season, nobody is going to be. I don't think that anybody would be looking back and saying NC State won the ACC championship solely because the defense was as great as they were. I don't think that would be the case. I think if NC State is to win the ACC championship, if NC State is to potentially get a playoff bid, or Devin Leary is to potentially be the Heisman dark horse that creeps his way into that race, it will be because Devin Leary has a dominant year in which he really does rewrite NC State's record books, which, by the way, is held by one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history in Phillip Rivers.
I'm a Chargers, so I'm well aware of Mr. Rivers.
Hey, listen, Dalton, I liked you until you said congratulations to the Avalanche. I hate those guys. I'm a Red Wings guy.
I'm a Preds fan, buddy. They are in the same division as us. It kills me to say that, but I said it because it was still in the ad read, and I'm like, well, what am I going to say? Sorry to the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Exactly. Lightning, I'm so sorry to see this happen to you.
I'm so sorry, Tampa. After you won 2 straight, I'm so sorry. But Tampa, regardless.
Listen, salary cap, salary smack. We love you, Tampa. Who cares if you got a little creative with the salary cap? You were the best team money could buy, and if you would have got another one, or if any other team would have beat you, except the Avs or the Blackhawks, I would have been happy. Right? If the Avs or the Blackhawks ever found their way into a series, I'd root for the asteroid. But with that being said, Dalton, you're still my guy, and I gotta have you on Locked On Wolfpack before the game. All right?
Of course, man. For all of those listening, definitely check out both Locked On Louisville and Locked On Wolfpack on all streaming services. Both shows running 5 days a week. Your teams both every day. That's going to wrap up this special crossover episode of the shows. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you on your regular scheduled programming here in the next couple days.